think I've told the story a handful of times now over the years, you know, just about my first time seeing and playing Mortal Kombat. You know, that was 1992 when that first game came out, and it kind of, you know, it was coming out right around the same time that I was getting into covering video games. You know, I hadn't earned a paycheck doing it at that point. I was 17 in high school, and just kind of, you know, like had started going to some trade shows and you know, had kind of fallen in with the rough crowd of video game journalists. Yeah, and my career kind of, you know, started around the same time as the original release of Mortal Kombat, and I remember going to some of those first trade shows and seeing the home versions of MK1 that Acclaim was working on, and they were barely finished. It was like some of the first like times I had ever seen like an early build of a video game, like an unfinished video game, and been like, wow, this has like 2 characters in it and none of the moves work. This is so good. It's like it's barely, it's glitchy. I broke it. I had to reset it 5 times. Like, you know, just like, it was neat to be able to bang on stuff like that, especially with a game you were familiar with because the arcade version had already been out. Later on, I would basically, I worked for a magazine for a year, and then that whole thing fell apart. The rumors were that the founders of the magazine had run off with what was left of the money and left everyone else holding the bag. And, you know, so I was like 19 and you know, frustrated. I'd already been through the ringer a little bit, I guess, you know, with layoffs and all of that. And, started trying to figure out what was next, you know, and I was enrolled in a journalism course and you know, trying to figure out like, college, I guess. I don't know. Like, do I need to go to college? I guess I should go to college. And then an opportunity sprung up to go to Reno, where there was an arcade trade show, and they were going to be showing Mortal Kombat 3 for the very first time. And I went to the teacher of the course and said, like, hey, I'm going to go cover this event. Like, you know, Game Informer's going out there, and, you know, like, I don't know, like maybe, I don't know, I'm going to get out there and, you know, see what's up. And he was basically like, yeah, I'm okay. I mean, you're going to go do a journalism. so get out of this journalism class. I mean, yeah, it was weird because, you know, I was like, I kind of did it backwards. Like I had been paid for writing and then took a journalism course, and it was a whole weird thing. But I basically dropped out of college to go see Mortal Kombat 3 for the first time, and that was pretty awesome. And then not long after that, you know, GameSpot came along, and I ended up getting on there, and you know, the rest is history, or whatever you want to call it. But you know, over the years, Mortal Kombat has been something I've always been very fascinated with. I've been a big fan, especially like this era of the series we're talking about here. This original handful of games, because now a lot of these games have been collected together into Mortal Kombat Legacy Kollection, which where is that? That's right here. This is the PlayStation 5 version of the game. It's on like Switch 2 and other consoles as well as PC for $50. I will disclose you right here and right now. I am in this, but was not paid for my appearance in it. Just so's you knows. I think this is a really neat collection. I think it's great to see these games collected. This is these games getting like the Digital Eclipse treatment, like the equivalent of like the Gold Master series, with a documentary of you know, here's some interesting kind of behind the scenes documents and things of that nature, along with new interviews that were conducted specifically for this. There's stuff in here that I certainly didn't know. And the documentaries over here in the crypt, where they've got some pretty cool stuff that goes through basically like it's 1 through 4, the arcade versions, and then you know, a lot of the home ports around the edges of all of that. And so, you know, there's a video here, you know, the split, when John Tobias left Midway and went to go start Studio Gigante. You know, like they get into that in a way that, like, this to me ended up being like one of the weirder. I mean, you know, it's the mystery is always more exciting than the truth, or whatever you want to call it. But this was one of those things that at the time there was a ton of rumors swirling around, like what happened, why did they, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So it's neat to have like these two guys sit down and discuss, like, no, here's what actually happened. They've got you know, like along with the people who were there working on the games themselves, they've gone ahead and interviewed other people. You know, like they've found video game industry experts to talk about important moments in time, such as the release of Mortal Kombat Mythology's Sub-Zero. I sit before you as the lone person, the last one left, maybe the only one that ever was, the only person that will sit here and tell you and look you dead in the eyes and say, Mortal Kombat Mythology's Sub-Zero is a cool game. The important stuff, you know, but it kind of, you know, this goes through, you know, like a lot of again, you know, much like you would expect from a lot of these other documents that Digital Eclipse has put together, these documentaries. Like they've got access to a lot of really interesting things. You know, the Mortal Kombat 4 truck tour, which I went to. You know, behind the scenes stuff on MK Mythologies, and you know, the shift from 2D to 3D and getting into mocap. You know, War Gods, of course, is a stop along that path. And really kind of digging into the different aspects of like the craze that formed around Mortal Kombat, right? I mean, for as much as the games themselves matter and everything, like, you know, there was like, maybe people don't realize it if they weren't really there or something, but like Mortal Monday was a thing. Like they got into comic books and obviously movies and cartoons and action figures and just a ton of stuff along the way. And so it's cool to see, you know, there's a press release from Acclaim, you know, talking about Mortal Monday, which is a cool, this is a cool moment in time here. Yeah, that's neat. And they Acclaim decided to put out a newsletter about, yeah, I don't know, man, weird. Of course, the Mortal Monday TV ad, magazine ads, that I remember that one. Yeah. A lot of stuff from around the edges, and a lot of stuff from the, you know, the early days of you know, kind of the formation of Mortal Kombat 1. I think there's a lot of stuff that people know, you know, stuff that's been talked about, like, oh, hey, you know, originally they approached Jean-Claude Van Damme about being in a video game and making like a Jean-Claude Van Damme game, and that eventually morphed into Mortal Kombat. Some of this stuff I'm sure was out there in some capacity, but I just, you know, never encountered it. But apparently Johnny Cage's original name was Michael Grimm. And also Curtis Stryker was one of the original ideas for characters, not in the form he would eventually appear in an MK3. But the name Curtis Stryker predates the existence of Mortal Kombat 1, is real wild. So yeah, you know, like a really, you know, and the fun videos of mocap sessions and performance capture and all that sort of stuff. And there's, it does what you want it to do, I think, in terms of telling that story and giving you a look at the kind of, it's kind of a wild ride of, you know, Mortal Kombat's kind of rise to prominence. The games are here as well. This is not quite out yet as of this recording, so I can't really speak to anything about the online stuff. They've got some options here about input lag settings and things of that nature, but I have not seen that. They've got a good, this is a good batch of versions. It goes pretty deep in terms of the console versions and just like stuff that I wouldn't have necessarily expected to see. They've got the arcade versions. The one thing I'll say is that unless it's hidden in here somewhere, I don't think that there is any way to choose which revision of the arcade version you're playing. I don't think you can go back to like, hey, this prototype version. Like, you know, if you go back and look at, you know, some of the versions of the game that have been dumped and have made the rounds online and stuff like that, there are, you know, 6 or 7 different versions of MK1, and you know, the early versions of MK1 had all this really insane bullshit in them with like sub-zero corner traps and stuff that, you know, that they fixed over time, like balance changes. I think some of that stuff would have been neat. It's, you know, maybe it's a little more than you need, but the monks clap. A lot of versions of the game don't have, a lot of the home versions of the game don't have the monks clapping, or the monks get cut off, which happens even in the arcade version in some situations. I remember the DOS version of the game being like one of the, like probably the best home version at the time.
Scorpion win. Flawless victory. Fatality. Fight. Get over here!
Their default control choices are fine. They put block on L1, which I feel like it would be better on R. I mean, you can map it. I mean, whatever. But like the for playing on pad, I feel like R1 might have been a better default choice. But there's a part of me that wants to, like, when they I think it was MK9, they put out the controllers that are in the layout of MK3. This is the first time in a long time I've thought, like, man, I should dig that thing out. Playing against the AI in MK, still not a great time. There's some stuff you can do here in all of the. You can turn on an on-screen move list. There's some cool settings you can do. We'll turn this on because this is kind of a neat thing. There were hidden menus in the arcade versions of the first 3 games. That you could just, it was like it was a crazy input that you had to punch in the attract mode, like, really quickly, and so no one ever knew it until it was like revealed something. I think I was going to say over like the last 5 years or something that info came out. For all the games, you can turn on a move list on screen like this, which is neat, and it will change to show fatalities when the time comes for that. But yeah, like AI fights in Mortal Kombat at the end of the day, not the greatest time. We can just hit block and we can get into this menu here. And here you can, in MK1, you can watch the endings, and you get a little fun message here that I guess Ed put in here. Like a few other, like some of the stuff is stuff you would see if you open up the arcade machine and put it into service mode, because it would show you like, oh, here's how many coins were put in the game or whatever. But if you don't work for the arcade and you're just Ed Boon walking around and you're curious, hey, how much money is going into this machine? There's a code in here that you could go up and find that information, which is kind of awesome. And then you can just go watch endings. In later games, you can use this to unlock characters and relock characters. If you're like, oh, we're gonna remove smoke from this version from this machine, and so yeah, it's got rewind. Where's that? That's L3 will rewind the game if you want to try to tool assist your way into a perfect run or something like that, which seems like it would be a lot of work. They've got a fatality trainer in here. Well, maybe this will be a little more exciting with a different version of the game. All right, yeah, that works.
Finish him.
And so you just get all of it right here. Wait, nope. Down, forward, back. Gotta be in fatality range, I guess.
Finish him.
Low punch, run, low punch for his friendship here.
Striker wins. Friendship. Friendship again.
Quality.
Finish him.
Sweep distance, that's right about here, right? No.
Striker wins.
Hands just floating there.
Animality.
Fantastic.
Finish him.
So this is, it's showing your inputs and then it's showing, okay, switch fatality. Okay, so we can kind of change which fatality we're ranging for. And then okay, I see now. So you got your close, you got your sweep, and the rest. Okay, I see. Yeah, down four block.
Striker wins. Fatality.
So, for arcade versions, they've got 1, 2, 3, Ultimate, and 4, as well as this, which is the Wavenet version of MK3. This was designed, I guess, if your arcade had a T1 network line run in, which none of them did. This was designed so that you could play arcade Ultimate MK3 over the internet. This is also like a revision of the game that is largely unknown and was barely ever seen. It was not widely released, obviously, because it was a test thing for arcades that had internet, which in 1997 just simply did not happen. And the idea that this is included here and is you can, if we start it up here, you can see that it launches and tries to do this, and that the menus are very different here, where you can go look at the latest Wavenet news. They should have hacked together servers. Yeah. And then basically once that network stuff fails out, it kind of, turns into something resembling a more, well, I guess I can rewind. Something resembling a, more normal UMK3 cabinet at that point.
Round one. Fight.
it's been too long for me to remember most of these combos. I guess we can actually here. We can do this as well, or we can just get a quick list here. But
Fight.
oops, that's his dial combo is a little. Run.
Wins. Fatality.
So the inclusion of this Wavenet version is really neat. And then you've got MK4, which is also interesting because, you know, arcade MK4 hasn't really been something that was super easy to play. Obviously, the game has been emulated in MAME for quite a while, but that version of the game is still imperfect. I think I tried it a few weeks ago and it like crashed after 3 matches. Like it's not, you know, it's not fully complete. And so this is a more accurate version of the game that, as far as I can tell, does not crash. Let's turn on that move list. What other, and you know, we get some other settings here. If you want unlimited fatality timer, you also get to adjust the rendering scale since this is a polygonal game, which is neat. We'll look at that in a sec here. You also have options to tweak the screen filters and backgrounds and stuff. Thousands of years ago! This game launched so, like, this was a weird case where, like, the first version of this game was missing characters and endings and fatalities and all this other stuff, and they really rushed it out, and then very quickly tried to update it to add more stuff, and I don't know, like, between fumbling the launch of it that way and just the nature of the game itself, like, Mortal Kombat 4 was never really felt like a big deal. Especially 1997, like, people weren't going to arcades as much. Like, it just, you know, it had started to, you know, home machines were really, you know, a big deal.
Kai. Choose your destiny. Round 1, fight.
So we got Rising Fireball and, yeah, okay, right. So he's got that little pop-up. Oh. Right, he does the handstand. Dude, I totally forgot. This is also kind of a weapon fighter, which is weird. Why don't we turn on unlimited fatality time now while we're thinking about it here? Oh, you can make it so you can pick the player 2 outfit.
2, fight.
So, like, you can hit down and run to pick stuff off the ground, which in this stage means you can pick up those heads and fling them. Super roundhouse. But every character could pull out a weapon, and Sub-Zero's would freeze them, and so Sub-Zero's always seemed like the only interesting one to me. Torso rip up close. Oh, well, great. Blew it.
Round 1, fight.
So let's turn up the rendering. So this smooths out the edges. You know, a lot of if you've messed around with a lot of emulators and things of more modern polygonal games, you know, this concept is probably at least a little bit familiar to you. Cool. But it looks nice. I think the bringing up the rendering resolution is pretty awesome. It kind of looks a little bit more like the Dreamcast version in a weird way, because the Dreamcast version did look less blocky than the original arcade game. That version is not here. MK Gold is not here. It's I don't think that's that big of a deal, because ultimately it's kind of the same game but with Cyrax, which that's something. But see, his little mace will freeze you if you. It's like if you like back and low punch with it or something. But since he dropped it, I could in theory try to go get it, and now I can freeze dudes with it, which is neat.
Sub-Zero wins. Round 3, fight.
It's also the weird well, I guess he does the backbreaker, but like Scorpion and a lot of the other guys do the thing with that thing where they bend your leg forward and he just like shakes it off. It's weird. It's kind of a universal input thing along with throws. I did play a fair amount of 4, but not like but I have in years since I have not like gone back to 4 or Gold or anything a lot to ever really to where like all of this stuff is a mystery to me now, like except for the basics of okay, let's see if we can do this sweep here. If I can just do like, why don't I just do yeah, like it's recommending that I hold down block, but I can just do the whole thing in the air.
Fatality. Round 1, fight.
The thrown objects do like kind of a lot of damage for, oh god. Again, as I said before, playing against maybe the issue you run into here, you know, whatever, you have difficulty settings, you can get in here and make it less. But you know, the problem with online play in a Mortal Kombat game, especially these arcade games, you know, it doesn't fight fair. And so winning, it becomes an act of you knowing exactly, let's see if I can do it. But you know, it becomes you knowing exactly what to do to take advantage of the AI and oh, can't quite get it going. There, that.
Johnny Cage win.
If you want to beat MK1, you can pick, I think it's Johnny Cage and Kano. Both have that same style of hop punch animation. And even on block, like they do take a little bit of chip damage, so you can just do this.
Johnny Cage win. Flawless victory. Fatality.
You know, kind of the thing about this being version 4.0 of MK1 is that you can't, I'm pretty sure at this point they had fixed the thing to let you accidentally knock multiple heads off with Johnny Cage. Missing some of those MK2 revisions means you can't do the thing where you can do Baraka's blades to a baby that you've created with a babality, which crashes the machine. Like there's stuff that I think as fan, I bet on the other side, on the developer side, I see why you might be like, no, don't put the versions in where it's broken. Like we no, but I would love to be able to go in here and say, give me revision 2.1 or, you know, whatever, just for kicks. And so, but you know, that should be here. No, like I was going to say, I get why that's not here, but like, I think if you're trying to make the definitive thing, like, I don't know, you could, it's a ROM swap. Ultimately, like it's, you know, like it's a ROM swap and a bunch of menu UI. I'm probably oversimplifying like 9 things, but I wish that was in here. Anyway, console versions, they kind of have a crazy, you know, they've got Genesis and SNES MK1, so you can finally see for yourself that the SNES version is absolute trash if you haven't seen it for yourself already. I always thought it was funny that this SNES version says competition edition on it. Like it's like, Yeah, this is the shit version of the game, and not for the reasons you think. A lot of people are like, "Oh, Mortal Kombat for the SNES sucks because it's you know, it doesn't have blood." That's the least of its problems. This game is terrible. Like, this game plays poorly. This game does not play like the arcade version of the game nearly well enough. The Genesis version looks notably worse than this version of the game, but is a much more accurate version, especially actually here, because, you know, you're not using a 3-button controller or trying to use a 6-button controller or whatever. Like, they actually just kind of map the buttons the way they should be for the arcade version of the game, which is sort of cool. But like, this version of the game was like, you know, you played it a lot because what else are you going to do? Weapons disabled in versus mode only is a real weird way to phrase this as well. But anyway, I think it just disables special moves, if I remember right. So like, this was just a much more accurate, you know, like accurate looking version of the game in terms of colors and all of that. But like, just combos and timing and moves and all of that stuff was so much worse. Come on, do the thing. It's just the input is so. It just feels so stiff, man.
Sub-Zero wins.
No flawless victory voice there. Cartridge, it was hard. It was hard. Cartridge space was limited, man. What do you? This feels gross. This version of the game, it's disgusting. It's great that it's here. It's the worst.
Sub-Zero wins.
You know, different and revamped fatality, different finishing bonus moves here on the SNES because they did not have fatalities along with the blood. It's kind of cool. It's cool to see what they came up with, you know? Like, some of them are mostly unchanged, like Scorpions and Sonya's, I guess, but you can't have hearts and spines getting ripped out. The kids can't handle it. The Genesis version, you know, by comparison, I think it's a much more lively version of the game. You know, just it plays faster, it plays more accurately, it's closer to the arcade version. If you had to choose, this was the one. You had to enter a blood code. You entered it here. It was A B A C A B B, but you know, we have the cheat menu enabled, so we don't need to do that. Blood on, cheat on. And then these flags do stuff like stuff for like reptile, or like I think one of them makes you have infinite health, and you know, like some other stuff like that. I always thought the voice in this version was funny. Fight! Like, it's just so here in this version of the game, you can actually do the thing we were doing in the arcade version. These hot punches work here. The music's kind of goofy here. I you know, they did a okay job. Obviously, the color depth of everything is not what it should be. Finish him. But you could do that. You could do that. But they get into like some other platform, you know, like the 32X version of Mortal Kombat 2 is in here, which is cool because the Genesis version of MK2 is a much better representation of the arcade than MK1 was. The SNES version is also way better than MK1 was on the SNES, and it has, you know, fatalities and all of that stuff. It's not, you know, cut back. But like the 32X version is kind of interesting because it sort of brings a better color palette to the Genesis version of the game, and kind of ends up with this weird best of both worlds kind of thing. MK3 on 16-bit platforms like this, you know, like and Ultimate MK3 on SNES is also just kind of a weird thing, because it came out so much, you know, so much later. You know, like these games came out on the Saturn and stuff to PlayStation, and so I never really messed with these versions of the game until like years later. It's just such a grimy sounding noises. All the audio is like it's like I called Mortal Kombat 3 over the phone. Plays okay.
Round 2. Fight.
It's my first impression of it, I guess. And then, you know, we get to MK Trilogy for the PlayStation. This was a somewhat different game on N64. Personally, I always thought the PlayStation version of the game was a better game. You had to deal with the load times and stuff, which is, you know, not awesome, but also has a cheat menu. And this was a weird version of the game because it, you know, it has weird versions of characters. You know, it's the MK3 engine with like a run button and all of that sort of stuff, but with characters that did not have run animations. This version to me always felt like a ROM hack and like not a real thing, and the aggressor meter that they put in it, like, it just, I don't know, it just always stuck out to me as like a neat thing that I could never bring myself to take seriously because it just felt like such a hack of a game, I guess. I don't know. And in its own way, it is really cool. So you can start in low damage. You can have health recovery. That's kind of the cheat menu stuff, I guess. So because Shang Tsung, you know, because you know, it was a PlayStation with a disc and all of that sort of stuff. When you morphed as Shang Tsung, it would have to stop and load the character off the disc, and so it would freeze. I wonder, you know, why don't we take a look and see what that's like here? You know, obviously now we're not really loading off a disc, we're loading it off an SSD. It's a little bit of a load time there. Oh, what do I end up with? How many? Oh, okay, yeah, cool. That just works. That just works. That's like a That's crazy. That's actually kind of awesome. Oh man. So yeah, this is kind of a first. I don't think any emulator does that. I don't think that there's any other precedent for Shang Tsung's morphs on PlayStation working as well as they do here. What do they even put for the moves list if I pick Shang Tsung? Does it show every... Okay, no, it shows no morphs. I was like, how do they do that? There's not enough room. That's right! That took a little time. Like, that's a weird little load time there before the fatality drops down, I think.
Fight.
Just trying to bang out morphs, don't mind me. That's cool that the moves list changes. That's thoughtful, man. That's, you know, in a game with like all these different versions, I appreciate that for, you know, when you're doing morphs with Shang Tsung, that the moves list changes to who you picked. That's cool.
Fight.
My unmasked Sub-Zero is not what it used to be. Okay, brutality. Oh man, okay. I should have turned on. I assume it's in here, in this one. Unlimited fatality time. Yeah. Play as Chameleon. Any male ninja can change into Chameleon. Yeah. So what was it in the N64 version? It was the ladies. Katana and Melina could turn into Chameleon. It was a different... Chameleon was a different character in the two versions of the game. Trilogy is neat. And then you get to some real bangers here. Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero and Mortal Kombat Special Forces. Special Forces, look, I will and have, and if you want to go watch, you can hear my somewhat impassioned defense of Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero in this very collection. There is no defense for Mortal Kombat Special Forces. There is no defending that game. I remember trying to get a review copy from Midway and asking because it's like, hey, it's supposed to be coming out, right? Like it was the release date was right around the corner. It was creeping closer and closer, and they were just incommunicado about it. Or at most they'd be like, oh yeah, it's almost, yeah, it's coming. And then one day it just showed up, zero fanfare, just in the mail. They did not tell us it was coming. It was just like, ugh. Like they had finally been like, all right, here it is. And we, you know, I think we popped it in and played it before it had been assigned to anyone. And it was immediately evident why they were not thrilled to send it out. And then we get to handheld versions, which this stuff is nuts, dude. Okay, so you get Game Boy and Game Gear MK1, Game Boy MK2, and then, you know, some games from kind of later in the series here. Well, Mortal Kombat Advance is just Ultimate MK3 for GBA, if I remember right. And then you get Deadly Alliance and MK Tournament Edition, which I think is like an updated version of Deadly Alliance for GBA, which these are weird. These are just weird. And it's cool that they're here. This era where they were obsessed with profile entry, especially on a single player thing like the GBA, is very funny. Secrets. That's survival mode. That's kind of cool. Movado.
Climax. Round one. Fight.
Oof. And so instead of it, you know, being like a weapon fighter per se, like I just have these 3 weapon attacks, I guess, huh? Whoa, 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 whoa. Great.
Wins. Fatality.
This is grimy. I love it. And having, like, honestly, like, you know, every time I go to try to play a game like this in any kind of emulator, you know, like, I don't know how to do anything. And so you're just like messing around with it for 5 minutes and going, okay, whatever. So this is a case where like having this on-screen move list actually really changes everything about this. It's kind of cool. Because now I can just mash this garbage out. It's just... Oh. Okay. Anyway, that's great. That's great. Those are not great games, but that's awesome that that's there. And so online, you can play a lot of these games online. You know, when we go to arcade here, it's 1, 2, 3. It's all of them. You know, like if you want to, and then console, it's everything. You can't play the GBA games or the handheld games online, unfortunately. Link cable emulation over the internet, not quite there. But no, now you can play MK Trilogy with people online without having to, like, the weirder hoops you would have to jump through to do that. I can finally play Mortal Kombat on the Genesis against another person over the internet, MK1, without having my X-band modem plugged in. Could we get X-band emulation up and around? Can we get, you know, what are we doing? Yeah, this stuff is, you know, you know, the game's not out yet, so I can't tell you anything about how the online functions or anything like that. The one thing I'll say from looking at the menus is I kind of wish that you could just opt into what games you want to play and then just quick match for all of them simultaneously. I feel like with games like this where you got like all these options, like, you know, the community will eventually gravitate towards certain versions and it'll work out in the end. But, you know, like, you know, if you're like, well, I really want to play MK4, but like, honestly, is anyone online at all? I'll play anything. I don't care. Or you're like, I want to play, you know, like, I'm here to play the 32X version of Mortal Kombat 2 and that's it. Nothing else will do. You know, we can go and search for a match. So I'd say, you know, just from looking at the menus, this stuff seems a little bare bones. And then here you can kind of see, you know, how much you've done. You know, it does have replay support for like local versus stuff. It seems like that would be, you know, another great use for this is like if you're a local versus person, if you have other people in your life locally that want to play Mortal Kombat with you, if you're truly living the dream, then that's probably going to be a great option here as well. I had this game. I played a lot of this game. This is not a good game. You know, you could probably try to make some case like, well, actually, for the Game Boy, but like, it just, again, it's kind of a problem of like input, like just the it takes forever for anything to happen. It feels so bad. like trying to get special moves to come out is a special chore. Okay, back forward X for the ice ball. Okay, there we go. We got it. Ugh. Like there's just such a deliberate pace to. Hey, come on, shoot the ice at this man. I know you want to do that kick, but please. There we go. Oh, what are we doing? Oh God, it's so. Oh, it's such a mess. I played so much of this stupid version of this game. We ran out of time. That's how hot this fight was. Kano timer scammed me. Come on. Come on. There you go. But like, you know, like I'm sitting here like thinking, oh, well, I'll win this fight and then try to do a fatality. But like, honestly, again, just I wonder. No. No infinite fatality time for this version of the game. I cannot get this ice to come out with any kind of regularity. There it is. You're just not gonna kick? Okay, I hit the button like 5 times. Kick him, kick him, kick him. Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. Walk over and hit him. Hurry. No. Hit him. Do the uppercut, man. Come on. Oof. Yep, there's our hot fatality. Couldn't get it to come out. Yeah, the inputs are just so unreliable. A truly dreadful video game. Awesome that it's here. And that's, you know, that's kind of the collection, you know. There's some stuff in here. You know, you can get some little details about some of these characters and kind of where they appeared. Spoilers. It's actually really awesome that that this character thing separates the. Oh, that's good shit. That's good shit. That's the right way to separate this out. That's the. But you can you know if you want to just like see the specific characters from specific games, you know, it'll you can filter it that way as well. But you can kind of get this, you know, kind of character specific timeline with their bios and endings. And then between 2 and Trilogy, we just get a big, like, I don't know what happened to Johnny Cage. What could have happened to him? I don't know, man. It's a mystery. Yeah, that's cool. Nice. And yeah, I mean, that's... Give me the details on meat. yeah, that's really neat too. And then, you know, music. It's cool. There's album covers in here for like the Mortal Kombat music from the arcade game soundtrack. Like they were selling these. The arcade cabinets. And then you get your console versions too. The Genesis music is not bad. It just always struck me a little funny compared to how the game really sounded in the arcades and everything. You can even get, you know... some real arpeggiated in our Sid chip era style. Yeah, MK2. And then even for, you can listen to like GBA compressed versions of this soundtrack. That's really funny too. Cool. All right. I need to this. Okay, I did not want that stopwatch to still play in my head. So there's Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. I think MK is such an interesting story when you think about the way it kind of changed video games and the way we thought about what a mature video game was. Some of the things that happened around rating video games in the wake of this. The government's response to stuff like Mortal Kombat and Night Trap and how ridiculous that was. It's funny, like mature is a weird word, right? When we use it in this context, because I always like Mortal Kombat is silly to me. You know, it's not like, yes, in its modern era, it's, you know, maybe some of those fatalities are downright gruesome, but they're gruesome and over the top in kind of silly ways, even now. And so it was always funny to see like this slasher film aesthetic kind of treated as like, oh my God, oh my word, the children we're ruining this. It's like, nah, it's just goofy. It's just goofy stuff. He rips his head off. It's like, it's hilarious. Like it's not some big, and like seeing kind of all of that, like Mortal Kombat ends up being a game that is at the crossroads of a lot of things for the video game industry, both in terms of, you know, the conversation around violence in video games and government regulation, but also, and I don't think that the full story is rendered here in Legacy Collection, because I think it extends beyond it a bit. But what it means to be an arcade game versus what it means to be a console game, a home game. And this was something that Midway would struggle with in the games immediately following this, you know. So this is kind of an end of an era, both for Mortal Kombat's kind of first phase, and for Midway as an arcade powerhouse, for everyone as an arcade powerhouse, really. You know, we get into 97, 98, you know, the Dreamcast coming out, and, you know, certainly the PlayStation into the PlayStation 2, you know, there's that whole era of like, oh, suddenly Tekken is better at home than it is in arcades. This is crazy. Like, why would I go spend $1 to play Tekken 2 when I can buy the disc and play it here? And, you know, you know, the kind of the death of arcades in that sense, or the repurposing of arcades. Ultimately, I think they would take on, you know, much different meanings, and you know, fighting games especially would thrive in different ways, I guess, around this time and in the wake of this. So obviously, you know, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was such a huge thing for the arcades that were left. But you had arcades starting to specialize and go like, oh, well, I don't know, we just have all fighting games now, you know, and then, you know, DDR and some of that stuff was harder to replicate at home. And so, you know, those cabinets would come in, and arcades would really change quite a bit. just after the events contained in Legacy Collection. So this is kind of a nice stopping point for them. I don't necessarily think that there's a documentary's worth of material to go on for the rest of this, but like I do think that like the Mortal Kombat story is very interesting, you know, like on the heels of MK4 and it kind of not, you know, MK4, you know, didn't seem to attract the crowds the way the previous games had, and through all that messy transition going home, you would eventually get to Deadly Alliance and Deception and like a full rework of what it meant to be a Mortal Kombat game. And that's such an interesting era unto itself, even if it's not necessarily like the entire industry is, you know, like watching this, you know, the Senate trial, you know, whatever it was, they're trying to hang video games or whatever. Like, you know, certainly the early days of Mortal Kombat were, you know, more all encompassing for all of video games, I suppose. But like that whole era, and then them coming out of that era into, I think, you know, the era that we're still kind of in, until further notice, is a really fascinating story, you know, both from just, hey, video games franchises kind of don't last this long usually, especially without breaks. I mean, what's the longest time there's been without a Mortal Kombat product on the market? It's not that long. And with, you know, Dan Forden just retired, like, I think 2 weeks ago or something. But like, you know, Ed Boon is still there. There are people there at NetherRealm that have been there for decades, you know, that have like their fingerprints all over a ton of these games, and even just like other stuff in and around Midway as well. And so like, you know, like teams move on, people move on, you know, like you don't really hear a lot about people sticking with a thing for as long as a lot of these folks have. And I think that makes it an interesting story as well. But, I guess that's my way of saying there are still stories to be told within the universe of behind the scenes Mortal Kombat content. But I think this captures the vast majority of what I think most people would be interested in is, you know, the formation of the franchise and some of the things that happened around it as it rose to prominence and then became like a merchandising powerhouse and all this other crazy stuff. And that stuff is well contained here. And I think Digital Eclipse has done it, you know, again, I'm in it. So, you know, take this with a grain of salt, you know, obviously. But I think they've done a good job of telling that story, and that stuff's been really neat to watch. So, there you have it. It's out, or it's just about out by the time you see this. It might be like out in New Zealand or something. Anyway, but yeah, it's on Switch 2, which I don't know why I keep saying that. Like, it's just there are so few Switch 2 games still that I'm like, it's on Switch. It's a Switch 2 game. It's not even a Switch 1 game. So that's kind of cool, and it's on consoles and PC for like $50, or like I think it's like 45 at launch or something like that. But that's out now. If you're interested in that sort of thing, this is very much that sort of thing.